Welcome to the next episode of the Austin Bar Association's Council of Firsts. I'm your host, Amanda Arriaga, First Latina Bar President. This podcast is made possible by the Texas Bar Foundation. Typically on the show, we talk about firsts, but today we're talking to an only. Christi Craddick is the chair of the Railroad Commission. For over 10 years, Chair Craddick was the only female statewide elected official in Texas. She was elected to the Railroad Commission in 2012 and is now on her fourth term as chairman. She's a graduate of the University of Texas and the University of Texas School of Law. She is active in the Dell Children's Medical Center Foundation, the UT Liberal Arts Alumni Advisory Council, and the Women's Energy Network. Chair Craddick has been outspoken about the need for more female voices shaping policy at the state level. I agree with her, and I am honored to have her with us today. Thank you for joining us, Christi Craddick.
Thank you for having me.
So I like to start at the beginning. Why did you want to be a lawyer?
I'm an accidental lawyer in some respects. Look, I went to UT, you said, and was a Plan 2 student. And part of the selling point, besides my parents figuring out it'd keep me in the state, was the fact that I could go to graduate school. And I think education's really important. I think graduate school education's really important for anybody, and it really is for women. And I couldn't pass chemistry, so I couldn't go to medical school. And everybody in Plan 2 seemed to be going to graduate school. And look, I'd done a lot of aptitude tests, so law school seemed to be a good fit. I ended up getting to law school, and the story really is my first semester. We don't have any lawyers in my family. Let me start by saying that. My mother had a cousin. He was a trial lawyer. I didn't want to be a trial lawyer. My college roommate at the time was going to be a trial lawyer, very different personalities. So I wasn't going to be a trial lawyer. But I felt like going to law school was important. But I get to my first semester, we're all in finals. Nobody likes their first year finals anyway. And I called my dad and I went, I just don't know that this is for me. And he said, well, you've got a problem. Okay. Said two things. First, you've already committed to clerkships this summer, which really were the saving grace for me. And not a lot of people got to do clerkships between first and second year law school. And two, and he said, you've got to finish law school because you can't afford your shoe bill. And I went, you're right. I was a liberal arts major. Nobody was hiring liberal arts majors. So I did clerk that first summer, and it really gave me a perspective of what a lawyer did, direction of what I didn't want to do and what I might want to do. And then kind of that's where I ended up being a lawyer. And I think that I realized that I really still didn't want to do trial work day to day. I didn't want to do criminal law. I have too soft of a heart, believe it or not, to do family law. I think it's a really tough thing, and I think you take it home with you, and I just couldn't do that. But I liked oil and gas. I grew up in West Texas, and so oil and gas was what we talked about at the dinner table at my house. I liked business law. In fact, in retrospect, I had a friend yesterday. We were having a conversation about what we would do differently. We're both lawyers, but not, quote, traditional law firm lawyers. And so what would you do differently? And she said, well, I was in government. I thought that's what I was supposed to do, was go to law school. I went, right, me too. But she said, I would probably take more business classes. And I said, I would too, because we're both in a business niche. But we also both agree we're glad, and we hope our girls end up going to graduate school. We think the education piece is really important. So law school was the beginning of a circuitous route for me. I don't think I was ever going to be in a traditional law firm either after doing those clerkships. Being in a big law firm and working 2,000 hours a year just wasn't my thing. Instead, I ended up coming out of law school and working for myself.
Was that your first clerkship, a big firm?
I had two. The first summer, I clerked for two firms, one in Midland and one in Austin, both really in the oil and gas world, although I did other things for them that summer. And what is really interesting is the one in Austin, they now practice in front of me at the Railroad Commission. So those men, some have retired, but those men were my mentors for quite a while in a direction. So I got to see administrative law through their eyes. And I think that gave me knew there was another outlet over someplace else that I could still do trial work. I could still appreciate the law. I could still do things, but I didn't have to be in the courtroom every day.
Well, and I think that is a great message to any law students that are listening, is try all the clerkships, even if you don't know that would be the right fit. Because I sort of did what you did. I did a ton of internships and clerkships in college and law school. Most of them were public sector on purpose. And then I did one stint in the private sector just to see. And I knew that wasn't for me. My heart is public service. whether it's state or federal, but I had to do the private side for a tiny bit of time to remember that.
And I did both. In my second year, I actually clerked at the Third Court of Appeals. I worked at the Railroad Commission. Who knew I was coming back? And I also was back in a law firm and was in that law firm for almost a year and went through a legislative session in that law firm. So I kind of tried it all. Didn't really do the true public sector until I got to the Railroad Commission, so to speak. I mean, I worked in and around government for a lot of my career, but had not worked for the most part in the public sector except the Railroad Commission. And I love this story. When I got back to the Railroad Commission, decided to run, which I know we'll go down that road in a minute, but the woman who had been my, quote, boss at the time, and the Railroad Commission doesn't always have a lot of clerks over there. We're public. We can't afford it. And so if people want to come over and work for us, we're glad to have them, but we don't always pay you. And we still have that problem today. But she was my boss and was working on a large case. So everything else that she got for the summer, I was in the library. That was my office because we do have a library at the Railroad Commission. And so she dumped it on me. So I got to do all these different weird cases that I didn't know the Railroad Commission did. And when I came back as a commissioner, she was still there and retired. And she said, I knew you'd do something. So again, one of those mentors that you find along the way that you don't know.
So many of the lawyers that I know are litigators that have aspirations to be judges. And you live where I live in the public sector and specifically in the executive branch. Why was that your path?
I think really the Railroad Commission was my path because as an agency, this agency is really important. In fact, I call it the most important state agency maybe in the country. Why? Because today we regulate as an agency an industry that's somewhere between 30 to 40% of the Texas economy. We're regulating an industry that is, we're producing half the oil and gas in the country is coming out of Texas, a lot of natural gas. We're creating jobs in this state because it's oil and gas. And so we're driving the economy, and energy drives the economy, right? It's important. When I got to this agency, we had some really good commissioners. I know them all. I know all the commissioners probably for the last 50 years. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle they were from, men, women. But nobody had been paying attention to this agency, and it was behind. And I felt like that was a real challenge for this agency. I sat in, they were up for sunset. Sunset, we're going to audit and see if you should be an agency. Well, yes, we should be an agency. This agency is important. But nobody had been paying attention. The oil and gas industry had really taken off in the state, and nobody was paying attention. So when I got there, for a little perspective, we were still filing things in hard copy. We're still on a mainframe Fortran, although we've come a long way and we're almost off in the last 11 years. That's been one of my priorities. And we weren't educating people about what this agency did, much less about what this industry did. The agency had about 680 people for the most active state in the country that wasn't getting it done. We're now at about 1,000, just over 1,000 people at this agency. We're still pretty lean and mean. We have field offices all over the state. We have 10 now, and I think that's important. I go out and visit them on a regular basis because they're out doing inspections. They're the front lines for us. And so we've got good people, but nobody had been paying attention. So I looked at it like a lot of women do, frankly, and said I could do a better job. And I'm going to run for office, having no idea what that really meant. And did it from Travis County as a Republican, had never run for office before. And I outworked the people. And it was in a cycle that we kept getting the primary pushback. And so I just outworked the 6 people in my primary. And then I had a runoff in a general election. And it's one of those in 2012, I was the dog that caught the car, so to speak. That I got there and everybody had my talking points because they made sense, I think. Some of it was obviously upgrading IT, but regulatory consistency and understanding what was going on, not just in the state, but across the country for oil and gas was really important, and I think continues to be.
So I'm sure you've been asked this question a million times.
What do we really do?
Yeah. Why is it called the Railroad Commission? How come it cannot be changed to the Oil and Gas Commission to more fully explain the service that this agency provides?
So the reality is we're the oldest state agency, constitutional state agency. We were founded as this state was really founded after the Civil War. We were founded and created to regulate railroads, and that's what we did until the 1980s. In the interim, in the middle of all that, in the 19-teens, 1920s, as an agency, we were given the regulation of oil and gas and pipelines because, remember, during that time in East Texas is when oil was discovered, and we were shipping barrels of oil, like trash can barrels, on the railroads. And so we had the relationship with the railroads, and the governor at the time said, y'all are just going to do this too. And we did. And frankly, we're the oldest oil and gas agency in the entire world, right? We like our name, by the way. It would cost us a lot of money to change our name. You get outside of Texas, everybody knows who we are. And frankly, as an agency, we like the direction that we've gone as an agency. And when you ask it why we aren't the Oil and Gas Commission, because we do a lot more besides just oil and gas. In fact, we're doing such a good job. The legislature keeps adding more stuff into our plate. So now we do coal and coal mines in this state. We do pipelines and pipeline safety inspections. We have 480,000 miles of pipe in this state. We're the biggest pipe state by a sixth. So pipe is really important. We do gas utilities. So for those of you who have gas that goes into your home, we are regulating that and do the rates for that in most places, or we're the appellate place for rates. Obviously, oil and gas is a big piece, and any oil and gas well that's drilled in this state, you have to come to us and get a permit. We also do geothermal, carbon capture, and it's our latest, and hydrogen. We just got hydrogen put in our world too. So we're not just oil and gas. We do a little bit of everything. If it's energy, it comes to us.
So if you're rebranding, you're really like the Texas Energy Commission.
We could be, but we like...
You like the Railroad Commission?
We like the Railroad Commission.
That works for you. I think that's great. I think there are most regular people, besides just lawyers, but just regular people, I think they have no idea about the interconnectedness of how energy works and how all of these different buckets have to work together to keep the lights on. And so a little bit, I would love for you to change your name only so that folks would understand what all those things are, because it's hard. The lights go off. You don't know why. You're mad at somebody, but you're not sure how it happened or how to fix it.
Well, remember, we're not the PUC.
Mm-hmm.
So really, the lights, aren't in charge of the lights. We're in charge of the gas and the fuel sources to make sure those lights stay on.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, you made sure my fireplace stayed on and my gas stove stays on when it's cold. So I appreciate what your agency does a whole lot. And you need to be careful, because I think everyone knows this, both as women and as state agencies. If you're good at something, you just get more to do. And so at some point, your role will keep changing because you're so good at it.
That's right.
So I expect more things to be added to your plate, because if you can be a state agency that's lean and mean and get the job done, they're just going to give you a lot more. And
they keep doing that, unfortunately, for us. But they at least appreciate, finally, it took us a while to explain to the legislature what we do. Mm-hmm. They didn't understand it, didn't understand the dollars that this industry brings in. I think that's a real key. When you're looking at, I said, not only we 30-40% of the state's economy, what's that really mean? From 2021 to 2022, this industry brought in an additional $5.5 billion into the state's economy just to the rainy day fund. The rainy day fund is oil and gas severance taxes. So, that's 100% plus that has increased. Now, look, we've had some downturns too. And so we try to be smart about where we use our dollars. We're fee-based as an agency. We've got to be smart about where we use our dollars. But this industry really has a big piece of the state's economy too. Mm-hmm. When we go in and explain it to the legislature and say, look, you've got a lot of money. We're glad you have a lot of money. You like to spend it. Let's remind you that it's coming because of the oil and gas industry and how we do things well in this state. And let's keep the feds out and make sure Texas continues to be smart about where we are.
So speaking of Texas being smart, one of the things that you've been outspoken about is the need for more females in statewide elected positions. How do we encourage that to happen?
I think running for office is tough for anybody. And it's really nasty, and people get really frustrated, and we all just sort of turn it off, which, by the way, I do too. But I think women do a good job being passionate about things. So do men. But women, once they get passionate about things, they want to get involved and find a way to really make a difference. And what I love about women that is a little bit different than men. Women go in, they see a problem, they try to find a solution, and they don't care who takes credit for it. Now, sometimes men care about who take credit for it, and some women do too. It's an overgeneralization. We all care about the same things, though. Look, if you've got women in the room, though, it changes the conversation. If you've got women in the room and you're talking about education or healthcare or your home budget, it's a different conversation than just men sitting in the room. And that's where I think I'd like to see more women get involved, whether it's at the local level or at a statewide level. That changes the conversation and makes it more relevant to all of us. So I'm a single mom. I budget my house. I take my looking at healthcare for my child and education and what the choices are and what we're learning in the classroom. All of that comes through me. It comes through men too, but I look at it differently. And so I think that's where once women really get involved, they change the conversation. I think the biggest challenge a lot of women have is one, believing in themselves and going and selling themselves. And two, acknowledging that they've got to go raise money. Nobody loves to raise money. And so I think supporting women ourselves is really important as well. But raising the dollars is a challenge for a lot of us. And we don't always have the relationships like some men do to go ask somebody for $500, right? Women don't always control the pocketbook politically in their household. And that's beginning to change too as we get more women involved in politics. That helps as well.
And one thing that you've done to help encourage women to not worry about this raising money or worry about their own self-doubt is to be a mentor. Why is having mentors so important?
Well, look, I don't think I really would be a lawyer if I didn't have a mentor. And it doesn't matter to me if they're men or women. I have a lot of male mentors. In the law profession, in fact, most of them, because in the oil and gas world, there weren't that many women, right? So a lot of the men that were mentors for me in the oil and gas world explained to me what was going on, not just from their perspective in law, but how to be a better lawyer, how to advocate for yourself. So I look for people who are where I'd like to be and go ask them questions, men or women. And I don't think it matters. I do think women give you a different perspective. And what's nice about like the Texas legislature, there are quite a few women over there. Doesn't matter which side of the aisle, again, they're from. And they all get along over there for the most part. Now, maybe they're battling on the House floor, the Senate floor about an issue, but they'll sit down and have a conversation with you and they support each other no matter which side of the aisle. And when I walk in the door, they'll support me in the issues because one, they know that I come in and I'm educating them and I'm not going to tell them stuff that isn't correct. We're going to come in and give them good facts and good information. So I think being prepared helps, but they don't get asked that often sometimes, and they're willing to do that. So, but I look at, we've got some really good men and women at the Railroad Commission. At one point we had an executive director and the head of the oil and gas division and the head of the pipeline division and the chairman were all women. We're down to about half of us are now women. Again, it kind of ebbs and flows. We've got some really good people but they wander through my office and think I'm a mentor. I'm like, I don't know. I learned as much from y'all as you might from me too. And I think finding good people and asking questions and listening makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure that everyone that has benefited from your mentorship is really appreciative of that, because it's hard to look at a fancy person and ask them for help and for advice, especially I think as women, we don't want to bother anybody. And so there's not a lot of people who might be bold enough just to come and say, hi, I'm Amanda. What's your name? I have questions to how I can be just like you. So I think being open for that and having that spirit of openness is really beneficial for the public at large. Well, so thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Thanks. It's nice to be asked.
What organizations have meant the most to you professionally or personally?
Just recently I've gone on Helping Hands Home Society, which I think is, again, it's one of those heartstring places for it. It's a place in the city of Austin that works with foster care children particularly those that have really had some real challenges. So I think it's going to be a great organization. I think they've got a great mission. And I know a lot of people over there that I didn't realize that give a lot of time. And that's what a lot of these kids need, is just a lot of time. So for me, professionally, obviously member of State Bar, but I've been a member of several organizations on the UT campus.
Mhm.
I've met a lot of different people. So I'm a liberal arts major, and that's sort of my passion, if you ask me. So I've been on the Liberal Arts Advisory Council, Alumni Advisory Council, since I was in my 20s. I was the youngest at one point. Now I'm kind of the middle-aged person, but I loved that because I got to meet people from all over the state and learn a lot, not just about liberal arts, but about how you advocate for things. Liberal arts isn't always the most popular thing to major in. You've got people who think it's not worth it. I think it is. I think learning how to think is really important, and you learn that in liberal arts. You learn to communicate. So I'm a real passionate person about that. But I've been on the President's Council and the Chancellor's Council and lots of other organizations. And right now I'm on the Kay Bailey Hutchison Energy group, which I'm kind of new to that group as well. This will be my second year. And that group is brought and Senator Hutchison and brought together not just the law school, but the business school and the energy and the engineering school to talk about energy and to think about it differently. And it's not just oil and gas, it's all kinds of energy, and it's all sorts of topics and where we go for the future. So I think that's a really innovative way to bring a bunch of different schools who kind of in the different topics together. So that's been a great organization. Been a member of the Junior League of Austin. I think that's really, again, a good place to train the future leaders, particularly women. And there have been a lot of places where that organization has had some real power in this community. I'm a member of a Republican women's groups. Look, Republican women are the backbone of the party for the state, and they will tell you what they think, which is good for me a lot of times. But it's also a good touchstone about what the issues are and what they think are important too, and what they're hearing across the state. So I spend quite a bit of time with a lot of those ladies. And it's not just about Republican issues. It's about issues that all of us are concerned about. So, and look, Dell children and healthcare, I think, continue to be a priority for all of us. If you don't have good healthcare and you're not in good, and you're having real challenges or you don't have access, it's very stressful. And so, trying to be healthy, teaching an 11-year-old to be healthy, to respect her body and to not worry about what other people think, but to be out there and be athletic and because she loves being athletic, and that's good. And to stand up for herself too and be part of a team. I think all of those are really important. So being a mom, I would say, is the most important thing I do every day.
What advice would you give to attorneys who want to get involved but don't know how?
When I'd go look at what the bar, whether it's the Austin Bar, State Bar, what some of the committees are. One of the things I always do during CLE, I don't do CLE about the topics necessarily that I'm interested in. I go look and I'll take, family law. Again, I told you it's not my favorite thing, but I think I'd like to know what's going on. So I'd go find an organization, if you've got law partners, go see what they do and go have a conversation with them and go out to one of their bar meetings. Cause I think or go do some different topics, whether you're active in your church or whether you're active in any organization, I think across the city and across the state, go back. If everybody went to law school, go see what's going on at your school. If it's convenient or not, go see what's going on down the street at UT. They've got they do a lot of seminars and a lot of things, and reach out. I always say reach outside your comfort zone a lot of times, but also find something you're really interested in. If you do, and it may change, by the way, but if you do, it gives you an opportunity to meet different people and to continue to grow.
And my last question, what's next for you?
I'm getting ready to run for the Railroad Commission again. So I've been there 11 years, coming up, getting ready to start 12, which is amazing because I get a 6-year term, which is nice. And then we'll see. Service to the state is kind of, I wouldn't say a hobby, but it's what I was taught to do. And that's where I think this is at this point in life. And so I'm open to other opportunities, but being at the Railroad Commission, I think, is one of the best places to be right now. There's a lot going on.
Is there anything else you would like to say to our audience before we end?
Thank you for the time. Appreciate y'all being engaged and really trying to continue to make this state and this city, which there are challenges with the city, but make this state a better place where we can all have better conversations.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us today, and thank all of you. We'll see you next time.